Hi, it's Bubble Cutie. It's been a while since I did my last DIY or upcycling video. Actually, I think it's been over a year, but because I love sewing and altering clothes, I thought I'd do another one. So for this video, I'm going to alter 3 different jackets, or actually it's 2 jackets and 1 blazer. I've seen people doing clothing DIY videos where they don't use a sewing machine and just sewing by hand or gluing clothes. But since I have graduated from a fashion design school, I am obviously gonna use my sewing machine for everything I sew. So I hope this video will inspire you guys to upcycle your own clothes. The first thing I'm gonna alter is this blazer I thrifted not too long ago. I love the plaid pattern, but I think it looks a bit plain, so my plan is to change the buttons and add some lace details under the collar and sleeves. I'm starting by removing all of the buttons with a seam ripper, and right after I've removed each button, I'm gonna take 2 pins and mark where I need to sew the next buttons. That way I'll see exactly where to place them. Here I have the cutest heart-shaped buttons I'm gonna use. I bought them from eBay and they're available in different colors and sizes. Usually when I sew buttons, I pull the thread halfway through so it becomes like a double thread. It's more secure and you won't have to sew as much as if it was a single thread. I'm starting from the inside of the blazer where the 2 pins meet right in the middle, and then I'll just sew about 3 layers and tie a few knots to secure the threads. This is the lace detailing I was talking about. This one's 1 centimeter wide, and I'm gonna sew it along the collars and sleeves of the blazer. When it comes to the edges, it's a bit harder to make it look good, so here's a little demonstration of how I fold the lace for the corners. When I pin the lace, I'm gonna sew on both edges of it. I also did this on these sleeves, but I didn't film it because I did the exact same thing. This is a jacket I thrifted a few years ago, but I haven't used in years, so I'm gonna transform it into a cropped jacket. First I have to remove the zipper, and if you hate seam ripping like I do, here's a little tip to speed the process. Instead of pulling each thread one by one, on some fabrics you can pull along the whole seam, but be very careful when you do this, because if your material is too thin, you can accidentally rip a hole. These are the measurements for a pocket I'm gonna sew on the front, 20 times 15 centimeters, including 1 centimeter seam allowance on all sides. I wanted my phone to be able to fit in it, so I used my phone as a guide on how big I wanted the pocket. This lace I'm sewing here is just an extra cute detail. Then I'm gonna take my serger and overlock all of the edges except the one with the lace. Now I'm going to place the pocket where I want it and fold 1 centimeter as seam allowance on each side. And always measure to make sure that the pocket is pinned evenly before sewing. I just noticed realized when recording this voiceover that I forgot to film when I cut the jacket shorter. Now I'm gonna match where the seams of the lining and outer fabric meet. Attach only 1 or 2 pins and then turn the whole jacket inside out. Replace the pins but pull 1 or 2 centimeters of the lining fabric apart like this, because the lining at the hemline should be a few centimeters shorter than the outer fabric when sewing jackets. This jacket also had a drawstring at the waist and I cut it right below the drawstring. As you can see, the fabric at the drawstring part is loose, but I want it to stay in place, so I'm gonna sew an extra seam right above it. Now it's finally time for the zipper, and when you're sewing a zipper on a jacket that has 2 layers, you often start by placing the back of the zipper facing the right side of the lining fabric. And the length of this zipper I'm using is 40 centimeters. You also want to change the presser foot to a zipper foot when sewing zippers. After I'm done with the lining fabric, I'm sewing a top stitch along the outer fabric. I'm just gonna add one last thing, this little twin stars iron-on patch. It's gonna be such a cute detail. This is a jacket from Lazy Oaf. I was shocked over how oversized it was on me, even though it's a size small, so I decided to make it into a set of a crop jacket and a matching skirt because I didn't like the original fit. I measured around 45 centimeters as the new length for the jacket, and make sure you'll have enough fabric for the skirt later. You're gonna need 1 or 2 centimeters for seam allowance to fold the hemline, so take that in mind. The jacket is also a bit too wide, so first I'm gonna take in the sides and the sleeves a bit. Then I'm cutting as much as needed of the sides of the front and back piece. I took as much as almost 4 centimeters on each side. Then I'm turning the jacket inside out and I'm gonna sew the new size of the sleeves. Make sure to measure and test it on yourself in advance so the sleeves and armholes will match. With this pin, I marked how big the new armhole is gonna be and where to attach the sleeve. I'm not the best at explaining, but I hope you somewhat get what I mean. When I've sewn the sleeves and everything, I'm gonna finish off with an overlock seam so the edges won't fray. Next, I'm sewing 2 top stitches along the armhole with about 1 centimeter distance from each other. This is kind of a decorative stitch that you often see along the armholes on jackets and on jeans. I'm also overlocking the hem of the jacket, then I'm gonna fold 1 centimeter as seam allowance. I'm so annoyed by the last button that is way too close to the hemline, but I didn't really have enough fabric, so if you have more fabric than me, do not fold the hem this close to a button. The last little detail I'm gonna do is detach the brand tag with the Easter Bunny logo and reattach it onto the pocket. There's just about enough fabric for the skirt. I'm gonna measure along another skirt I like the shape of and just adding seam allowance on each side. I've actually made this blue skirt myself too. The jacket had 2 pockets here, so I'm gonna detach them and use them later. I'll show that in the end. When I've cut out the front piece, just gotta do the same thing for the back piece and sew the sides together. I'm gonna adjust the hem a little bit and make it more round because the shape of the jacket was completely straight. For sewing the waistline, I'm gonna use this cotton ribbon. You usually add this when you're sewing something that has to be tied and not stretch out. Now I'm gonna make 3 belt loops because I know I'm gonna be wearing belts with the skirt and it's also a nice detail. You can choose how big you want the loops, of course, but I'm gonna go with 3.5 times 7 centimeters. Then I'm folding them about 1 centimeter on each side. Now I'm gonna add an extra button, so I'm measuring the distance between the other buttons. Lazy Oaf sent this extra button when I ordered the jacket. I don't know if the color is supposed to be darker, but it annoys me so much that it's not the same shade as the rest. But anyway, I'm starting by poking a little hole for the button thingy that goes on the wrong side. And this is how you fasten the button. Now for the buttonhole, my sewing machine has this buttonhole foot, so that makes it super easy to sew buttonholes. Not all sewing machines have this feature, but you can also do it by hand. Pockets are the last thing on the skirt I'm gonna make. The original pockets are a bit too big, so I'm gonna adjust them to my liking. I think the pockets are so adorable with the Esther bunny patches, and I also measured so my phone will fit perfectly in them. Before actually sewing the pockets, I'm gonna measure and make sure both sides are even. And there we have it. My skirt is finally done. Let me know in the comments which one of these jackets you like the most, and I'll see you in my next video.